Every kilometer. The highway stretched before me like a ribbon of black silk, cutting through the mountains under a moonless sky. I had left the last town hours ago, my car the only thing moving against the oppressive silence of the night. The tires hummed along the asphalt, a lonely, constant note, while the headlights carved a pale cone into the darkness ahead. First, it was just a shadow, a dark shape in the middle of the lane, just beyond where my high beams reached. I slammed the brakes, heart pounding. The figure was impossible to place. Too still, too rigid, but human enough to make my stomach seize. When the headlights cut it fully, it disappeared. The lane was empty. I laughed nervously, muttering about exhaustion, playing tricks of light and shadow. I forced the car forward. Exactly 1 kilometer later, it reappeared, in the center of the lane, standing perfectly still, facing me. Every instinct screamed at me to stop, to reverse, to run. But I kept moving, eyes locked on the strange figure. My high beams made it more distinct. Pale, faceless, arms hanging loosely at its sides. Nothing about it suggested life, but I could feel its gaze. Some impossible awareness locked on me. I glanced at the mile markers. Each new figure appeared precisely on the next marker. 1 kilometer. Always. I counted, shivering. The road seemed to bend slightly with each interval, shadows stretching unnaturally, trees leaning closer to the edge of the asphalt. I called out, "Hello!" My voice sounded small, swallowed instantly by the void around me. The figure did not move, did not respond, but as my words echoed, the beam from my headlights wavered, bending in ways it shouldn't, shadows folding back toward the edges of the road. I tried acceleration. The figure remained exactly 1 kilometer ahead. I slowed. The same. My pulse thrummed in my ears as the car hummed against the asphalt. Every time I glanced in the rearview mirror, I felt the shape there, though nothing should have been. By the 4th kilometer, the figure's outline sharpened. I could make out the subtle sway of its torso, the way it seemed to lean ever so slightly forward, anticipating my approach. I slammed the brakes instinctively, and for a heartbeat it froze entirely, then resumed its stance. The surrounding forest thickened. Shadows pooled under trees, stretching into the lane like dark fingers. The markers began to look alike, each milepost identical to the last, as if the road was folding onto itself. Signs I remembered from the early stretch appeared again, inverted or mirrored. I passed an old, rusted guardrail, and a tree I swore I had seen 500 meters ago was suddenly there again. I shouted this time, "Stay there! Don't move!" My voice bounced, distorted, returning to me in whispers I hadn't spoken. The figure's head tilted slightly, as if acknowledging me. My pulse hit my throat. I realized with sudden clarity. The figure was aware, measuring me, learning my speed, my reactions. The 5th kilometer arrived. I knew exactly what to expect, but nothing could prepare me for how real it looked now. Hairless, faceless, humanoid, yet impossibly tall, stretching unnaturally from the asphalt. Its arms bent at odd angles, elbows sharp as knives. Shadows pooled beneath it, forming a perfect circle around its feet, distorting the lane. I slammed the brakes, throwing the car into reverse. The headlights bent, flickering against the trees, then stabilized. The figure was behind me now, though there had been no road, no mile markers behind me. The air seemed heavier, pressing down, carrying the scent of asphalt and wet leaves. The road itself had changed. Curves that hadn't existed an hour ago looped back toward me. Shadows danced in impossible directions, as though the lane had become fluid. I realized then, the highway was no longer linear. It was a corridor, a snare, a guide. The 6th kilometer came too fast. I wasn't moving. Yet there it was, standing perfectly in the middle of the lane, closer now, every detail visible. Elongated limbs, pale, wet-looking skin that reflected the headlights. I swerved violently. The figure didn't flinch, tilted its head to one side, mocking me. I screamed, hitting the horn. The sound ricocheted off unseen cliffs, coming back distorted, fragmented, like dozens of horns echoing endlessly. The figure repeated the sound, a high, warped mimic of my own horn, then froze. Its limbs quivered, stretching toward the headlights. I realized, with horror, that the intervals were not arbitrary. Every kilometer it appeared to measure me, to test my fear, my reactions, my awareness. The road was its mechanism, the mile markers a metronome, each step drawing me deeper into its control. By the 8th kilometer, I wasn't driving so much as obeying. My eyes were fixed on the next marker. The figure waited, always facing me. Every instinct screamed to turn, but the road, this impossible loop of asphalt, shadow, and night, compelled me forward. I tried to flash the high beams, swinging them left and right. The figure shifted subtly with the light, as if dancing in synchronicity. I tried shouting, waving my arms. It mirrored every motion with a grotesque precision. It was learning me, perfectly, endlessly, without speaking, without thought, without mercy. The 9th kilometer brought something new. The figure's face, or what I thought might be a face, split into faint contours, a grid of sharp shadows and light. Its posture leaned slightly forward, anticipating not just my movement, but my intent. It wasn't just a marker on the road anymore. It was the road. I hit the brakes hard. The figure didn't stop. It advanced, or did I? The asphalt seemed to pull beneath the tires, stretching, bending, folding like liquid night. Mile markers repeated, doubled, mirrored themselves. Trees leaned closer, branches clawing at the headlights. By the 10th kilometer, I realized I wasn't driving alone. The figure multiplied, reflections, shadows, afterimages. Every time I blinked, more stood along the road, perfectly spaced, perfectly aligned with the kilometer markers. They didn't move from their positions, yet I felt them approach. Every heartbeat echoed in the blackness, matching the rhythm of the intervals. And then the final truth. It wasn't standing at each kilometer on the road. It was standing at each kilometer in my mind, in the measure of my fear. Every kilometer I passed, I carried it forward, and it carried me back, folding the road around itself, folding me into the endless corridor of night. I screamed, slammed the wheel, swerved into a roadside ditch. The car shuddered, headlights flickering, and for a moment, just a heartbeat, the figures vanished. Only the empty road remained. But the next marker glimmered faintly in the distance, and I knew with cold certainty that the highway would always place them there. Every kilometer, waiting, watching, patient, because the road doesn't lead anywhere. The road is them, and they will wait for the next traveler who dares to obey its intervals. Static breath. The highway stretched into darkness, a ribbon of asphalt cutting through dense forest that pressed close on either side. My headlights barely penetrated the black, wet night. Rain had slicked the road earlier, leaving tiny rivers running along the shoulder. I had the radio on, scanning through static-laden stations in the hope of something familiar. Music, talk, anything to keep me awake. For miles, it was the usual. Hiss, scratch, weak signal, fragments of songs that seemed to start but never finish. Then it changed. The music faded, replaced by a faint hiss that grew into breathing. At first, I thought I'd misheard, maybe the fog of exhaustion playing tricks. But the sound persisted. Slow, deliberate, uneven, rising and falling as though someone had pressed their face against the speaker. The breath had weight to it, human weight. I twisted the dial, trying to switch stations. Static, hiss, then the breathing again. Closer, hot in my ears, curling through the dashboard vents, seeping into the cabin. I turned the volume down, thinking it might be mechanical, a malfunction, but even the lowest hum carried it. I shivered. My knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. "Hello!" I whispered into the rain-slicked night, but the sound didn't carry. The breathing, however, did. It responded. A shift in rhythm, like inhaling when I paused, exhaling when I spoke. Lightning split the sky, briefly illuminating the forest. Shadows stretched unnaturally, converging toward the road, then recoiling as if startled by my headlights. The radio hissed and popped. Then, A faint whisper beneath the breath, a fragmentary word that made my heart stall. Here. I froze. The word repeated, barely perceptible, and each time the intonation shifted as though it were listening to me. The steering wheel trembled slightly in my hands. The rain pounded the roof, and yet the cabin felt dead silent, except for the breath that had begun to echo in unnatural counterpoint. I reached to turn the radio off. Nothing. The dial spun freely, but every station produced only the same sound. Breathing, heavier now, more deliberate, more aware. Each exhale seemed to push against the cabin itself. The windshield wipers faltered, jerking. The engine sputtered. Okay. I muttered, trying to rationalize. Electrical issue, maybe moisture, a malfunction. But deep down, I knew. The sound wasn't coming from the radio. The radio was merely a conduit. It was through the radio. I drove on. The road curved, slick and treacherous, the trees crowding closer. With each bend, the breath changed subtly. A pause when I paused, a rush when I accelerated, a hissed mimicry of my own exhalations. I realized, stomach turning, that it was learning the rhythm of me. Then came the whispers, slight, buried beneath the breath. Stop, look, come. The words didn't cohere, but the tone was unmistakable. Patient, deliberate, coaxing. My pulse hammered as I scanned the dark shoulders of the road. Nothing visible. Yet the sensation of being watched pressed in from all sides. A crow cawed in the distance, but the forest remained impossibly silent otherwise. Even the rain seemed hesitant, dripping slower, leaving the night unnaturally still. I glanced in the rearview mirror. Mist swirled across the highway like a living thing. The headlights barely pierced it. I tried to call, my cell phone held up like a shield. The moment it activated, the breathing shifted, louder now, coming from the speakerphone. It echoed around the cabin, tracing the curves of my skull. It was everywhere, inside and outside, inside again. I dropped the phone. It landed speaker side down, and the breath paused, waiting. I tried reasoning. Okay, you want something. You're listening. My voice cracked. I'm listening. The exhalations slowed, aligning with my speech. A shiver ran down my spine. It was aware of me, not just listening, tracking, responding. The radio lit in brief static bursts as if pulsing with its own heartbeat. Then it moved, not physically but sonically. The sound began to stretch, travel, shifting from the car to the cell phone to the dashboard display. Each device carried the same breath, layered and omnipresent. I slammed on the brakes at a sharp curve. The breath responded, quickened, shallow, then slowed, deliberate. A faint echo of laughter buried beneath the exhalations. The steering wheel twitched under my hands. Outside, shadows moved faster than they should, folding against the trees, then dissolving into the black. I accelerated, hoping to outrun it. But the pattern persisted. Every time I changed speed, the rhythm adjusted. It wasn't tethered to me. It was tethered to my awareness. Every blink, every inhale, every heartbeat, tracked, mirrored, mocked. An overhead sign flickered. My headlights caught a figure. Indistinct, human-shaped, standing beyond the guardrail, faceless in the rain-smeared night. I slammed on the brakes again, but when the lights settled, nothing remained. Only the radio breathing. I pulled over onto a side road, desperate, engine idling. I ripped the fuse from the radio. Silence. Only the rain. Only the wind in the treetops. Relief? Perhaps. But then a cell phone pinged. The device I had left on the passenger seat lit up, screen aglow, and from it came a slow, deliberate inhale. I screamed, throwing the phone into the forest. It hit the wet soil with a soft thud. The radio remained dead. I sat frozen, listening to my own ragged breathing. Or was it my breathing? I couldn't tell anymore. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. When I finally dared to look around, the forest seemed emptier. Still, but I could feel it. Something had left. Or perhaps it was merely patient. I started the engine again, keeping my eyes on the road. No radio. No music. But every time I exhaled, every time I took a breath, I felt its presence, echoing, waiting, inside the spaces between sounds. I realized, with cold certainty, that it hadn't come for the car. It hadn't come for the devices. It had come for me. And now it was already inside,